It's been more than 1 month of the Russia-Ukraine war, and the destruction is not only happening in Ukraine but also in Russia. Apart from the military losses, the common Russians are in a bad condition. The Russian currency, ruble, has crashed in the last few days. Now, there are long lines outside the ATMs in Russia. The banks are out of cash. People have started hoarding phones and electronic items, which they are buying as many as they can, because these are the only things whose value wouldn't appreciate. The hard-earned money of the people has started losing its value. Thousands of Russians who deal with foreign countries aren't getting their salaries. Inflation is at a peak and doesn't seem to come down. Share markets were closed for a month. Why is it happening in Russia? When a country goes to war, how does it affect the economy of the country? How are the citizens affected? We will discuss these today. This video will shock you. Even the country is a superpower. What war can cost it? Even though the war isn't fought in the country. Come, let's take a look. Sanctions from the West are already having a major impact on Russia's economy, and a 30% loss in value is seen in ruble. Many people are worried about their income as Microsoft, Apple, Samsung, HP, Intel stopping new sales, and all Western businesses are shutting down. Everyone who can is leaving, otherwise they will be left isolated. The ruble, worth less than a penny. A study conducted by the Center for Economic Recovery claims that in the first 4 days Russia had to incur expenses to the amount of $7 billion for starting this war, with approximately more than 500 billion yen only for the first 4 days. With the continuation of the war, the same study has estimated that this cost can eventually cross $20 billion per day for Russia, which is only the direct expense borne by the Russian government. The Russian taxpayers' money is used for fighting this war. But this is only the tip of the iceberg. Let me list out the impact of the responses from the rest of the world. 33 countries have closed off their airspace for Russian airplanes, which means that Russian aircraft aren't allowed entry into the airspace of those countries, including the US, Canada, and numerous European countries. According to the estimates, about 150,000 Russian tourists in these countries were there for a visit. It is now extremely difficult for them to return. Airbus and Boeing are two major companies in the world building aircraft, have said that they would stop sending their spare parts to Russia to the Russian airlines and would suspend their operations in Russia. In the near future, it would be very difficult for anyone to fly into Russia or to fly out from Russia. Imagine that these major multinational companies, we use their products and services in our daily lives. For the Russians, suddenly they can't access them anymore. The oil giants, like BP and ExxonMobil, had similar responses too. BP has said that it would dump the 19% stake in the Russian state-owned energy company. It shows that foreign companies are pulling out their investments from Russia. Apart from this, the two most powerful bodies of football, FIFA and UEFA, have decided to suspend the Russian team from all international soccer events, resulting Russian team wouldn't participate in the FIFA World Cup. Formula One racing, the Grand Prix was supposed to be held in Russia. It also stands cancelled now. But apart from these institutional bodies, governments have also taken action against Russia by declaring sanctions against it. Broadly speaking, sanctions mean imposing a penalty or punishment on a country for violating international law or for their aggressive behavior. These punishments can be imposed on a country via various means, but mostly they are economic sanctions targeting the economy of the country. A major sanction imposed on Russia currently is the SWIFT block. The Russian banks have been cut off from the SWIFT system, which stands for Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunications, is a payment system used internationally by more than 11,000 financial institutions and more than 200 countries globally. The central bank of almost every major country uses this SWIFT system. But the SWIFT system doesn't actually move the money, instead it merely communicates the source, amount, and destination when money is to be moved. It can be thought of as SMS, or like Facebook Messenger of the payment transfer. which is the reason why every bank has a SWIFT code that is unique. Since Russian banks have been cut off from SWIFT, it means that neither can Russian banks accept money from international sources nor can they send money. But the interesting thing is that Russia isn't the first country this has been done to. Before this, Iran was blocked from SWIFT access, which resulted in Iran losing 1/3 of its foreign trade. But it isn't like Russia wasn't prepared for this, because when Russia invaded Crimea in 2014, lighter levels of SWIFT sanctions were imposed on Russia. Since then, Russia worked on creating its domestic messaging system for payments. This would lead to severe effects in the short term, but in the long term, Russia will come up with some way or the other. It will develop its payment processing system. Another major example of these sanctions is freezing the assets of Russia's central bank. This is because the central bank of every country has some foreign exchange reserves, which are known as forex reserves, which means that the banks keep some money in foreign currency. The reason for maintaining forex reserves is that payments have to be made to other countries or for facilitating any global trade. Just as every other country, Russia's central bank maintains reserves in US dollars. America and other countries have frozen these dollar reserves and wouldn't accept further US dollars from Russia. So the forex reserve Russia has will now be of no value, which costs around $630 billion. There's another very shocking and interesting way to impose sanctions that Putin, his friends, and Russian billionaires own assets outside Russia. They have properties in foreign countries, private airplanes, and huge yachts. The US and other countries have decided that all these assets, these properties, and these private planes would be seized. As a specific example, a Russian oligarch named Degar Sechin had a super yacht worth $120 million. The French government has now seized it. Flight bans are imposed on the Russian oligarchs. They wouldn't be allowed to travel anywhere outside Russia. There's a simple reason behind taking these actions: to pressurize Putin to stop this war. When these oligarchs and Russian billionaires are targeted, people who are said to be controlling Putin, it's possible that they can convince Putin into stopping this war. One thing that proved very hard to cut off from Russia was oil and gas. For European countries, 1/3 of their gas supply is from Russia, and if they cut that off, the gas price in European countries would skyrocket. Despite that, Germany suspended the approval of Nord Stream 2 pipeline, a pipeline that's already built, but they hadn't begun using it. How can they overcome their existing gas dependency on Russia? They're trying to come up with alternatives. America said that it has large oil and gas reserves, which it can be sent to Europe to cut off its dependency on Russia. In the near future, the standard of living of an average Russian would fall and many people would be pushed into poverty. Unemployment and inflation are also rising. This is important for those people who think that starting a war is a good thing for the country. Russia invaded Ukraine and war is being fought in Ukraine, but the common Russian people are paying the price with their own money. What is your stand on this? Let us know in the comments section below.